whole shift going on. There is a whole shift going on in the world. We're seeing values change. We're seeing a shift away from thinking that money is everything to, yes, money is important, but there are other aspects of life that are equally important. New values. We're seeing men choose to work at home so that they can be closer to their families. We're seeing women decide that they don't want to exhaust themselves over a career. They're wanting more work-life balance. So if you're sensing a shift, if you're aware of that shift, just write yes in the comment box, just so that I know that you're on board with this new wave of thinking. And by the way, there's about a 20-second delay between when you make a comment and when I see it. So I might be a little bit slow acknowledging some of your comments. The next thing I want to ask you is, do you get a sense that there's a bigger you wanting to embrace this new world order, this new life where it's no longer about self-sacrifice, but it's actually about seizing the life that's calling you? You feel that there's a bigger opportunity for you that you might actually be missing, because what I'm going to invite you to do today is to join this new wave. Here at the forefront of this momentum, this movement that's happening, that's seeing certain people rise to the challenge, seize the life they want, do what they love, make a difference in the world, and feel fulfilled and rewarded in the process. So if that's you, just enter yes in the comment. And I'd like to officially welcome you to Wake the F Up, how to get off the hamster wheel of self-sacrifice and seize the life that's calling you. Now, before we do anything, I feel a big thank you is in order. Thank you for, first of all, turning up. Thank you for spending the time hanging in there, waiting for us to start. I really appreciate that. But more than anything, thank you for taking this time to invest in yourself. Because only a few people, a minority of people, actually do what you're doing today and showing up so that they can become a bigger, if you like, better person. And accordingly, because you've invested this time in yourself, I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that that investment of time has been well rewarded. And specifically, here are the three things that we're going to cover today. What you're going to discover, the three questions that you need to ask yourself to become boss of your life. Because how many of you are in this position right now where you've kind of feel stuck in your current situation? Maybe you're in a job or a position, maybe you're a CEO of a company, or you're carrying a lot of responsibility, a lot of weight, and it exhausts you, but you just don't know how to march forward. And there's a tendency when we're in that situation to want to jump off a cliff. So I'm going to say to you, don't jump. There are things that you need to know about yourself before you make that leap. And that's what we're going to cover today. The next thing, which is just as, if not more important, is once that you are clear on those three aspects of yourself, what's the one thing that could potentially stop you in your tracks? It's an issue, and you might have an inkling of the kind of issue it is, but it's the feeling of you take one step forward and then two steps back. It's almost like as soon as you want to go for something that's unfamiliar to you, you simply quit. So we're going to look at that, because that's the key really to getting the life that you want. And then finally, once you've got those two issues sorted in your mind and in practice, that's when you can fast track your path to freedom. So what we're talking about here is investing in yourself and then charging forward, but not leaping into the unknown. Does that all make sense? If that makes sense, just write MS in the comment box so that I know that you're on board with all of this. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do is just consider, where are you at the moment? Which one of these profiles, if you like, do you relate to most? So let's go. The first one is you're stuck in a job or a career and you just don't know how to break free. So that's number one. Do you relate to that? Or is this more like you? You've transitioned, you've actually made the leap, you've transitioned to being your own boss. Maybe you're working for, a corporation, now you're operating as a consultant, but it's not as easy as you thought, and it's all a bit of a struggle. Thirdly, maybe simply the issue for you is that you know that you're great at what you do, but for some reason, you're not being rewarded financially in the way that you should be, that what you're being paid doesn't equate to what your true worth is. Possibly you might be stuck in some kind of position and you would make the leap if you could, but because you can't see the way forward, because it feels like jumping into an abyss, you simply don't want to take action at all. Is that you? And then finally, maybe it's none of the above, but maybe there's just an inkling. Maybe you're actually comfortable in your life. Maybe outwardly you're successful, but inwardly it doesn't feel that way. There's a misalignment there, a dissonance, if you like. You know you could be something more, but it feels like there's this missing piece and you just don't know what it is. So just enter in the comments, which of one of those 5 positions do you relate to most? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And there's no wrong or right answer, of course, and maybe you relate to a couple. So if that's the case, you could put 1 and 3, for example. Or if none of the above, just share with me where you're at in your life right now. What's the number one issue that you're facing? So knowing actually where you're at segues beautifully into what's possible for you, because it's almost as if you have to feel the pain of the present moment, of something missing, in order to crave what is missing in your life. And let's look now from where you're at to what's actually possible for you. What's possible for you? So think of it this way. You're in a position now where you're able to say, I'm clear on the business that I want to run, and I have the confidence to make it happen. Just imagine for a moment what that feels like, because that's possible. What else is possible? I can persevere, knowing that I'm on my true path. Because knowing that you're on your true path is half the battle. It's when we vacillate. It's when we go, well, look, if this doesn't work, I'll just go for plan B. When we leave the door slightly ajar, all our energy flows out of that gap. So know that when you are totally focused on your true path, that's where perseverance comes from. Perseverance born from passion. Thirdly, imagine this, because this is what's possible. Now that you understand your true value, the money is flowing in. Have you ever thought about the fact that maybe the reason money isn't flowing in is because deep down you actually question your self-worth? Just think about that. We're going to get into this more. If that's the case, know that there is a solution to that. How about this? Know that this is possible, that your self-doubt has absolutely disappeared, and now you actually have a reason to get out of bed. How good would that be? And then finally, and this is really the game changer, that for the first time, I am excited more than scared about my future. Imagine that you see the future path ahead of you, and rather than trepidating and thinking of all the reasons why you couldn't possibly entertain the idea of whatever it is you want, financial freedom, freedom in relationships, freedom to do what you want, work the hours that you want, make a good income. Imagine if that seemed absolutely logical to you, that future, rather than something that deep down you don't feel you deserve. Just imagine that for a moment, because that is what's possible. So how do I know this? Well, let me share with you my story so that you can understand the path that I've walked on. And I'm sharing this just to say that I'm only a few steps ahead of you. But if I can walk this path, just the fact that you're here today, I know that you can as well. So how did I get to this position where I'm at now? Well, I used to follow this mantra that the harder I work, the more money I'll make, the more money I make, the happier I'll be. Does that sound familiar? Just write yes in the comment if that sounds familiar, because I know many people, particularly of my era, you know, where we achieved a lot in the 80s and the 90s, this was really the mantra that we all followed. And sure enough, following this mantra, I became a serial entrepreneur. So I was with my partner, Ralph. We ran 2 restaurants. We ran an advertising agency that we started from scratch that was very successful. We went into real estate, buying, renovating and selling over 100 properties. We did a land development where we actually created our own suburb, if you like, a waterfront suburb by the sea. And as if that weren't enough, we also got into the wedding business. Now, I'm not sharing this with you as some kind of brag list. Actually, it's more of a confessional to say that this is what happens when you think that it's all about hard work, making money, self-sacrifice. And that's essentially what happened to me. And I'll never forget the day that I finally got everything I wanted. We had the waterfront mansion, private beach next door that, you know, would have been the envy of Richard Branson, a beautiful family, 3 beautiful daughters, solid marriage, and we had money in the bank. And this is the moment when I had everything I thought I wanted, that I thought happiness was going to be the reward. And there I was sitting in a kayak, surveying everything that we owned. And instead of the promised happiness, all I felt was emptiness. And because I didn't take action, the universe took it for me. And in 2008, a year later, delivered the global financial crisis. And I'll never forget, as I watched everything that we'd spent the last 30 years working so hard for disappearing slowly before my eyes. And because my whole sense of self-worth was tied up in my net worth, it was as if I was watching myself disappear. Until I got to that moment, and I don't know if you've ever got to this moment, I got to this moment where I heard on the radio about this fellow who had dealt with his financial loss by throwing himself in front of a train. And instead of feeling empathy or compassion, I was plagued by one thought: if only that was me. Now, when we reach our rock bottom, we have, death is inevitable, if you like. It's not whether or not we're going to die, but it's which type of death do we choose? So do we choose physical death, where we leave behind all the pain and suffering of our friends to our friends? Or do we choose a metaphysical death, where we have to let go of something that we've held on to dearly for all of our lives? And so that was the path that presented itself to me. I had to let go of this whole idea that money was the key to happiness. And of course, it had to raise the question, if money and hard work aren't the key to happiness, then what the hell is? And I'm just looking back now. Thank you for sharing the where you're at in this path. And I want you to listen carefully now, because maybe some of you are where I was at this point, where you have no choice but to go on a search. And so I listened to all the thought leaders. I attended lots of workshops, seminars. There was, most of them offered me little nuggets of insight, but there was one that changed my life, and it was a Face Your Fears boot camp. And at this boot camp, we went through a simulated death experience. And I have to say, I was actually quite curious. You know, will my life flash before me? Will I feel that euphoric light at the end of the tunnel? But instead, as I went out, all I heard was a voice. And the voice said to me, "Janet, you've let everyone down." And as I came to, I was overcome by this tidal wave of disappointment, which quickly turned to outrage. You know, how dare this wet sock of a line be the entire summation of my life? And then as that, if you like, that self-righteous anger subsided, the truth had emerged. Of course, I let everyone down, and no one more so than myself, because by being what I thought was selfless, I was in fact being selfish. I was denying the world my gift. And my gift, I realized, was to actually help people find their true path. And so that's really why I'm here today, speaking to you in this masterclass, to say that I've made a pact with myself that I'm not going to hear those words when I am on my eventual deathbed. And I don't want anyone else, I don't want you to hear those words either. I don't want you to feel when you come to the end of this road that you've in any way let yourself down. And that's why I do what I do. So my vision, if you like, this brings me to my vision, is to see a world where our occupation becomes a preoccupation. It's something that we choose, not because we have to do it, but because it's what brings us to life. And my mission, therefore, how do I do that? Is I help people unlock their undiscovered self so that you can realize your potential and make a living doing what you're most passionate about and what you're wired to do best. So that's why I'm here. That's my vision and my mission. And so accordingly, what happened is I created this program called The Fifth Door, the quest for success. And on any quest, of course, we have to ask ourselves the three questions that are going to make all the difference between success and failure. And to do that, we first have to establish where we are. So I have this model, which I call the 5 doors. And as I go through this, I just want you to listen carefully and establish where you feel you are in your life right now. And maybe it's helpful to think about a specific issue rather than your life in general. So when I say specific issue, it might be health, relationships, career, finance, quality of life. So just start to think of your life in those areas and which one is troubling you the most right now. And as I go through these 5 doors, just see which door you relate to most. Okay, so the first door here is the one that very few of us actually want to confront. We call it living hell. And this is whatever the worst case scenario is for you. So it might be bankruptcy, it might be developing a chronic disease, it might be chronic anxiety, depression, whatever living hell means for you. I'm sure we've all spent time behind door 1. Door 2 is what we call the treadmill. And the treadmill is the life of absolute compliance, where you've chosen to just obey all the programming that's been passed down to you, whether it's from parents, school, society, the religions, peer group, whatever. It's the 9-to-5 life where you've chosen to take not any risk. That's treadmill. Now, fortunately, there are 3 other doors. Doorway 3 is roller coaster. So in some way, you've chosen to break away, but it feels like there are more downs than ups. It's not that smooth staircase to heaven that you might have imagined. Maybe you've started up your own business, maybe you've moved countries. Somehow you've gone, I'm going to take charge, but it's not the plain sailing ride that you thought it would be. Door 4, we call pipe dream, which speaks to those opium dens of the past, where people would create a paradise in their mind, but it was a deluded paradise. In other words, this is when we subscribe to what we think is the life well lived, our version of paradise. And then when we get there, it feels like there's something missing. So what we realize is that, well, maybe it was someone else's idea of paradise, not my own. And I was very fortunate to get to that position, experienced that moment when I was in the kayak. And then, so these are the first 4 doors. And then there is a final door, the 5th door, which had remained a total mystery to me. I wasn't aware of this. I wasn't aware that this life was even possible. So what is the 5th door all about? And if you have a niggling sense inside of you that you could be something more, then chances are it is this door that's actually calling you. So how do we describe it in a way that makes logical sense? Well, just imagine for a moment that there are 3 aspects that have come together that intersect when you manage to cross the threshold to the 5th door. What are those 3 aspects of you? The first one is passion. It's doing something, committing to a cause, something that you feel passionate about. Now, are you sitting there right now going, yeah, I don't really know what I feel passionate about? That's absolutely normal to be feeling that. And I remember once when a coach said to me, Janet, write down what you want in life. And I looked at the blank page and burst into tears. I had no idea. So what's happening here, if this is you, is that you've put all your identity into your work, and in the process, you've lost your sense of self. So you've lost the connection with your heart. It's totally normal, and it's easily fixed, but it doesn't mean that you're someone who doesn't have passion. You do, but it's been suppressed. So we have to bring that to the surface. That's the first part. The second part is doing something that you're actually good at, that you're awesome at, that you're, in a way, you're hardwired to do. And it might be something that you totally take for granted because by its very nature, it probably comes quite easily to you. And then finally, the third piece is taking the first two and directing them towards a problem that needs to be solved. The bigger the problem, the more you will be rewarded if you are providing a solution for it. So what happens if you only get a couple of these things right? Because it's a case of you either get the target or you totally miss it. And it's the fine calibration that we have to be aware of. So if for instance, you get the first two right, but not the third. So in other words, you find something that you're passionate about and you're good at it, but you can't seem to apply it to a big enough of a problem to make an income from it. So it's not actually solving a problem that is regarded as being valuable to others. What is it, essentially? It's a hobby, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having a hobby, but it's not necessarily sustainable because at some point you might get sick of it because you're kind of in isolation with this hobby. It's something that you do in private. So what if it's something that you're good at, or something that you're passionate about and that other people get paid for? So for instance, I like playing tennis. Would I ever win Wimbledon, even the veterans division? Absolutely not. But if I actually thought that I might, I'm kind of in a dream state, aren't I? Yeah, so that remains a dream. That's fine, so long as you know that that's what it is. And then I suppose the final category for me is the most poignant one, because this is where I see most people. And this is where you're doing something that you're good at and you're, definitely of value and you're being paid accordingly, but your heart just isn't in it. What do we call that? And I think it's a job. And that's where most of us spend most of our time, in that space, with no engagement in terms of what really lights us up. So when we get all three right, we are in what we call a sweet spot. And that, if you like, is the essence of the fifth door. So what I'd like you to do now is just put in the comment box of those doors, which one, thinking about the issue that's probably the biggest issue for you right now, the one that might, have you awake at 3 a.m, which door are you behind currently? There's no right or wrong answer. There's no judgment here. It's just to help you get clarity about where you are currently. And just write that down, because we need this starting point. Transformation requires a starting point and an end point. It's not saying it is the end, but you need to have a goal to go towards. So just sharing where you are of those 5 doors. I'll just remind you what they are again. So there's living hell, treadmill, roller coaster, pipe dream, and the 5th door, which is your sweet spot. So which of those are you behind right now? So the question then is, how do you find this sweet spot? What's the process? If we know this, that this is the goal, then how do you get from where you are now to crossing this wonderful threshold? So think of it this way, that you have to start to understand that there are 3, if you like, keys. So if you imagine it's a door and you need 3 keys actually to open this particular lock. The first one is all about mindset. So creating the foundation that's going to support everything that you do from this moment without self-sabotage, so that you leave yourself open to all those possibilities that we spelled out before. The second one is mastery. So once you have got out of your own way, that's when you can actually accept where you are gifted and focus your energy on that. Because I guarantee most of us, and I know I've been here, we might be good at a few different things. And so we spray all our energy over those different things. And what happens? We get nowhere. So mastery is about understanding what your particular superpower is and then focusing all your attention on that. And then finally, meaning. And this is the holy grail, being able to apply those first two to finding meaning by adding value to the lives of others, understanding that there's something bigger than you. So looking at those three things, mindset, mastery, and meaning, the three things that allow you to arrive at your sweet spot, which do you feel is most important? Which do you feel needs to take precedent over all the others? Is it mindset? Is it mastery? Is it meaning? So just put in the comment box, which of those is it? Is it mindset, mastery, or meaning? Which is the most important? If you could just focus on one and really see transformational change within yourself in that area, which one would it be? I'll leave you with that question. And now I'm going to share with you the key. The finding the right key starts with asking the right questions. So what are the three questions you must ask yourself in order to bring an improved mindset, mastery, and meaning into your life? And these are the questions I wish I'd asked myself before I started all these different businesses. And if you're on the verge of starting a business or making a transitional change in your life, these are the same questions you must ask yourself. So thanks, Deborah. And Deborah's just shared knocking on door 5 and the sweet spot is on the other side. I know, Deborah, you're so close. And number 1, yeah, mindset. Yeah, Donna's saying number 1, mindset. All right, we're going to get to that. Thanks, guys. So the 3 questions you must ask yourself. How do you bring this heartfelt aspect into your working life? It's by asking this question, who am I? And I'm going to say the extension of that question is, who am I not? Because what happens, the reason we've blocked ourselves from passion is because we think we're someone that we're not. We've identified with a false mask. We've lost our identity in work. So do you remember how all my identity, for instance, was caught up in self-worth? All my self-worth was caught up in my financial net worth. And when that was taken away, my sense of self went with it. So I collapsed. I just wanted to check out because I felt, well, I'm of no value anymore. My money has collapsed, therefore I am nothing. That's a very tragic place to be, but it's almost like a place some of us, myself at least, had to go to in order to be open to change. And I don't think this is essential if you're listening to this for you. You don't necessarily have to have this crash, but you do have to ask this question, who am I? And then the next question is, what's my gift? And when you know who you are and you can accept who you are and you understand all your foibles and you totally accept them, there's no judgment, no self-criticism, in that loving, accepting space, then and only then can you actually accept whatever it is you've been given as something special and worth pursuing. Does that make sense? Just write MS in the chat if that makes sense. And Wendy's chimed in here, mindset governs mastery and meaning. Yeah, totally agree, Wendy. You're right onto it. The final question that we must ask, once we know what our special thing, our secret source is, and once we accept it as the special, unique gift that it is, we almost have an obligation to give it back. And in the giving back of it, this is where we must ask the final question. What's my pathway to my greatness? I'm not talking about huge megastar change the world greatness necessarily, but greatness for you. What's your pathway to your greatness? So these are the questions. And when you have the answers to these questions, life becomes effortless. You basically flow in the slipstream of your own power, of your own sense of purpose, if you like. And this is when all other forces come to assist you on your journey, because you are there for a greater cause. And I'm not talking about sacrifice, right? This is serving yourself first. So these are the three questions. Once you have these, is that enough? The most important thing at this point is to understand that maybe no, it's not enough. There's one thing that can stop you. One thing that is hardwired into you, that despite your best efforts will trip you over, not because it's malicious or it's evil, but simply because it's operating beneath the surface of you and me and everyone on this planet, and we're not even aware of it. And so I'm just going to ask you, just to see if you've ever experienced this firsthand. Have you ever felt like quitting? Have you ever come up with a project or an idea, and before you've even given it a chance to, take flight and flourish, you've given up on it? Just put yes in the chat if that's you. I know I have many, many times. In fact, often it doesn't even get onto paper. It's just, oh, that's a silly idea, and I just dismiss it. So have you ever felt like quitting? Just write yes or no if that isn't you. So I'm going to just go back to this question of which is most important, mindset, mastery, or meaning. Mindset, because it's the mindset. Thanks, Dawn. Yeah, I'm glad that's making sense. Because it's thank you, Deb, the mindset that's the foundation. Thanks, Boris. Mindset has to be the foundation on which mastery sits, and meaning then comes off the top of that. Does that make sense? Yeah. And Deborah likes the idea of our gifts being there to give back. Absolutely. That's if you like, the sacred loop. And that's where we're living in a state of constant exchange. And once we're there, life becomes extremely enjoyable. It's like Christmas every day. To not put a too fine a point on it, but this is where we're going. This is the direction. It sits on a base of mindset that allows us that then we have the willpower to actually devote our energy to becoming good at a specific thing that we become known for. And from that moment, we have no choice but to want to share it with others. And this, of course, is the essence of meaning, of giving of ourselves to others that they give back to us. It sounds so logical, doesn't it? Why is it so hard for us? Why do so few of us get to this point? Well, I'll share with you chapter 2 of my story, just to give you an example. So when I put the Fifth Door program together, my immediate thought was, you know what if I could shortcut everyone's journey so that they didn't have to go down all the zigzag paths and dead ends and false starts that I went through, these 6 businesses that ended up going nowhere. They were successful, but didn't make me feel good inside. What if I could spare others that? And I thought, wow, what if I'd done something like this when I was, still at school? So I designed this program actually for people still at school. And there's a picture of me teaching it to this amazing school in Bali called the Green School. And where I'm teaching it to the group that I thought would benefit the most, kids about to leave school before they had a chance to make all the mistakes that I made. And interestingly, and it was successful, and they definitely got a lot out of it. But interestingly, the word got out, and it was the parents who started expressing interest. And there I am leading a group of parents at the Green School, showing them, teaching them how to have the ideal life. What that could look like for them, a life where they're playing on a much bigger scale and engaging in that exchange. And it went really well, and they loved the whole program, the whole process. You can see the enthusiasm there in the room. And then, that line, actually, I don't know if they ever said this line in the actual movie, Houston, we have a problem. Yeah, I had a problem. I could get people to a point where they could see their ideal future, but most of them didn't do anything with it. And this, I realized, was the biggest problem of all. It wasn't the fact that they, whether or not they were talented, and it wasn't that. And they got the whole idea of, you know, a bigger life contributing to something bigger than them. They kind of got that idea of purpose, but they couldn't get past the biggest block of all. And what was the biggest block? What was the biggest problem? Inaction. And I thought, well, if they're not going to take action, what is the point of me even doing this? I mean, you know, and I had a moment there where I thought, well, is this even worthwhile? Why am I doing this? I could go and do something else, go back to advertising or whatever. But that moment that I had, that voice, you've let everyone down, wouldn't let me go down that path. I had no choice. I had no choice but to persevere and find out what this problem in action was all about. What if I could reverse engineer in action so that people didn't become their own worst enemy and stop themselves before they'd even started? And so what I realized was that, you know, anyone who's done a bit of psychology knows that all of us have some kind of childhood trauma. You know, they call it the childhood wound. And we know that it leads to a feeling of shame, and that we have shame hardwired into us. So I knew that that was a situation, that's where we find ourselves. And I knew that how that turned out in our adult life, or how it appeared, was as inaction. And I thought, okay, so what if we work backwards from inaction? What causes inaction? So when you know that you want to take a step forward and you don't, what's happening for you at that point? Just think about that. Is it a thought? Is it a feeling? Is it a pit in your stomach? There's something triggering you that's telling you to hold back. What is that? So I think in all of us, we have our own particular brand of, let's call it the F word, fear. So there is fear that's keeping us stuck. But I couldn't get the connection between shame and fear. What's this missing piece? And so I realized that all of us exist in this, if you like, this crazy loop, a crazy loop. And let me just share with you my example. So we have when we're very young, something happens to us as a child. There's some kind of crime, let's call it, which is we come into the world as this loving creature, this young child. All we want is to feel safe and wanted, and instead something happens that causes us to feel not safe or not wanted. So in my case, I was a much adored, overindulged only child till the age of 4, until my parents came home with my baby sister, and I thought that she'd been bought from a shop. But what I noticed in that split second was the eyes of the room going from me to her, and in that moment I thought, I'm not enough to make mummy and daddy happy. And so a few weeks later we went shopping, and I managed to find all these price stickers off appliances, and I stuck them on my baby sister's forehead, hoping someone would buy her back. And of course, they didn't. And instead, when we got home, my mum just flew into a rage. You know, she said, "You naughty, naughty girl," and went chasing me around the house with a wooden spoon. What I realized, and this seems common to everyone, and I'm wondering if things are coming up for you right now, that we experience this emotion that is so profoundly disturbing, we can't deal with it, not at that young age. So instead, and this is the missing piece that I was looking for, instead, what we do is we wrap a story around it to make it more palatable to us, to make it more digestible. And that story is a pact, if you like, with fear. And the story is kind of agreeing with whoever the perpetrator of the crime is, that they are right, because we cannot challenge them. We're too young. So what happened to me? My story was, yeah, I'm a naughty girl, and this becomes that missing piece, what I call the core destructive belief. And I'm a naughty girl then, for me, justified, explained back to me, every time my mum would go red in the face and smack me with the wooden spoon and yell at me, yeah, of course, because it's all my fault, because I'm a naughty girl. It's nothing to do with the fact that she's stressed and, at a wit's end with a baby that won't stop screaming. We tend to, up to the age of 10, everything that happens to us, we take the blame for. We think it happens to us because of us. This is diabolical, but it's not something we can change, but we can certainly become aware of it. Why is this core destructive belief so destructive? Because every time it's triggered, it creates what we call a fear. I'll call it a core fear. So you actually have your own brand of fear, right? We talk about fear of failure, fear of success, but it's kind of a little bit more nuanced than that. So the core fear, I'll just go back to me as an example. My core fear, so if it's I'm a naughty girl, my core fear became, kind of seems obvious, getting into trouble. So what happens when you're driven by this fear on a subterranean level, either it stops you in your tracks or you rush off and do something that makes you feel better about yourself, okay? And we call this the prison of the overcompensating self. So in other words, we have a sense of inner wrongness that's wrapped around shame. Shame makes it feel wrong, like there's something wrong with us. That is unpalatable, we don't know what to do with, and because it feels so wrong, we try and make it better by overcompensating. So I became the teacher's pet, I became the nice girl, you know, to undo this feeling of naughtiness. Obviously I wasn't aware of this, we never are, this is how we operate beneath the surface. Is it sustainable? Can you keep this straight up for any particular length of time? What do you think? It's exhausting, isn't it? Think about how you might be doing the same. How you might be really pushing yourself to be someone you're not, and what's driving that behavior, what's forcing you to be someone better. You don't need to be better, you're just you. We don't know this. And that's exhausting. And so inevitably, because it's so exhausting, because we can't maintain that facade, we always go back to our previous, that core destructive belief. And so we find ourselves on this amazing pendulum. And so what happens in our adult life, instead of the crime being perpetrated against us, we become the perpetrators of the crime. And so that's what happened to me. And so 2 years into the relationship with a man I've been married to for 40 years, before we got married, I had a one-night stand and I didn't understand why. All I know is that because I was very much in love with the man who turned out to be my husband. But all I know is that the next day I was absolutely engulfed in shame. And so therefore, I spent the rest of my life unconsciously trying to make up for this crime by being the perfect mother, the perfect worker, you know, running those 6 businesses and eventually wearing myself into the ground. So do any of you relate to this? Just put R for relate in the chat if this is, if you suspect that there might be a crazy loop playing out for you. And there's nothing wrong with this, by the way. I believe it's something that we all experience. I don't know anyone actually who's exempt. So I think of it this way, that there's a parasite inside all of us eating away at our dreams. And so it begs the question, what do we do about it? You know, if it were just a physical parasite, we'd take a pill for it. But what do we do when it's a mental parasite? What can we do? So this is the final piece, fast tracking your path to freedom. Has anyone ever been in therapy? I know, you know, most people probably have. There was a time when I had issues with one of our daughters and I went to see a therapist. And I don't know about you, but I found it a really frustrating experience. So for me, why was it frustrating? Well, firstly, I found it painful. I found that having to go down into my murky depths all the time was painful, and it didn't seem to be serving any purpose. And it just felt really hard. It didn't feel like it was going anywhere. It was taking time. Like there was no time limit placed on it. It was just like, oh, see you next week, Janet. And the problem, and so, you know, it was an endless outgoing of cost always as well. And I just didn't really feel that I was getting value for money. And I thought maybe it's in the therapist's interest to keep me hanging on as a client. Maybe, you know, this probably isn't true, right? But I suppose my suspicious self was starting to think that as well. But the thing that really got me was that there was no fixed outcome. Every day or every session, she'd say, "Oh, hi, Janet, what would you like to talk about today?" And I thought, but can't you guide me? Because honestly, obviously I'm clueless. Can't you tell me where we should be going with this? And I realized in hindsight, the reason it wasn't working for me at least was, and I'm not saying, therapy can be incredibly useful. I'm just sharing with you why it didn't work for me, is it didn't get to the root cause of the problem. And so we just continued skirting around the issue, trying to change my mindset, trying to, look at myself in the mirror and smile. But I had no idea of the shameful core destructive belief that was running me beneath the surface. And so it was basically trying to get rid of an itch by tickling it some more. So I thought, okay, what if there were a pathway that was simple, that didn't feel hard and painful, that had a specific beginning and an end, so it didn't just go on forever, that was actually affordable, so that you knew up front what it was going to cost you, so it wasn't like this endless outgoing of funds with no effect, and that actually worked because it got to the root cause of the problem. And I guess this is where my advertising person kicks in, and I go, because this is what we do in advertising. We come up with strategies and come up with solutions to problems. Why can't we apply this to mindset and take a really pragmatic approach? Because there are too many people out there suffering, and there are too many people out there knowing that they can see where they want to go, and something's stopping them. And to me, it just feels so unfair that they can't actually get what they want, because I've been in that position and it sucks. Quite honestly, it sucks. So if there's a way through, why don't we pursue that? So I liken it to a game of Tetris. I don't know if you've ever played Tetris, but imagine that there's like a Berlin Wall inside of you waiting to be toppled. And if you topple it, if you allow it to collapse, there's this huge feeling of relief. Just imagine that for a second, that you could experience that feeling of relief by bringing down this wall. I thought, what is the wall? Why? How do we make this? How do we bring this down so that we can operate from a place of clarity and inner cleanliness where there's no shame anymore? And it's funny, but one of the things I realized was really simple, actually. It came from a storybook that I used to read to my daughter Clover when she was very little. I can't tell you how many times you read this book. It's called The Monster is Coming. And I thought, oh my God, the answer is in this book, that we all have a shadow. We all have a dark place. And that shadow is, if you like, the screaming child within. And all that shadow wants is for you to wrap your arms around it and say, I see you, I hear you, I understand you, and I thank you for what you've contributed to my life. And that was the missing piece. That's the shadow that's created the core destructive belief, that's tried to protect you from the danger that you faced as a child. The only reason it's not working now is because you're not a child anymore. You're an adult and you don't need that straitjacket of a protection. But we need to engage with our shadow to say to the shadow, it's okay, you can loosen your grip right now. It isn't a monster, as my daughter Clover discovered. It's just the shame attached to it that makes it seem so. And so this is really what I realize, what we need to do. We need to bring out this piece in us. And I thought, if we can do this in a way that's safe and guided, how transformational would this be? And so I created a model, if you like. I love triangles. I love their simplicity. 3 things. You try and bend it out of shape and it just won't bend out of shape. It's immutable, it's solid, and we need to create this solid structure inside of us. And this is the path you need to take if you want to transmute this negative energy that's within you, that's within all of us. We have to do this path. There are no options. We have to go to the path, but we don't have to do it in a yucky, awkward way that is lying on a therapist's couch. It's not that at all, because we're all in this together. There's no shame, actually, about you or anything that's happened to you. It's just the feeling that stayed there as an undigested part of your system. But we must go there. And we go there because we have to go to the unconscious self. And beneath the unconscious self are the key aspects of you that you need to bring to light: your core fear, your core destructive belief, and your overcompensating self, positive self. And when you bring those to the light, suddenly everything changes. There's a beautiful saying, when you're in it, you can't see it. When you can see it, you're no longer in it. So when you bring these things to the surface of you, suddenly you can see your future. Your future becomes clear and it becomes bright. And you're bringing these things to your consciousness. And so now also what you bring to your consciousness is who you really are. Remember the first question? What was the first question you have to ask? Who am I? This is when you can finally see the core truth of who you are. And when you see the core truth of who you are, there's a magical realization that you are never bad. There was never anything wrong with you. You just had to be able to see it. And you had to take the dirty lens off and see yourself through a clear lens. And when you can see this about yourself, instead of always living either in the past, ruminating over the past, regretting the past, or living in anxiety about the future, when you bring these two aspects of you together, this is when you become finally present. And when you're finally present, you achieve what we hear gurus and people who feel out of reach talking about, but it's very real, a state of oneness. So how many of you would be interested in potentially finding out more about this, what this might look like? So I'm just going to leave that thought with you. And I'm going to share with you the steps that I took or that I broke down this journey into, if you're curious to know what this would look like. And I understand that, you know, for a lot of people, you might not be interested in this. I totally get that. But if there's part of you that's curious, that goes, yeah, what would it look like to tread this journey, which is essentially a hero's journey? What are the steps? And I'm going to share these steps with you now. So this is the path that you take to understand your shadow and get to the other side. The first step is to, and we've covered a little bit of this today, is to basically understand how the crazy loop works. So we do a deep dive into that to get to the bottom of how the crazy loop's been playing out in your life. Secondly, any form of addiction, and I'll say that my addiction was work. I think we all have an element of the addict in us. It's obviously not as extreme probably as, you know, someone on the street who's an alcoholic. But when there's a void within us, when there's a part of us that hasn't been completed, we try to fill it from the outside. So whatever that is, and we might have all sorts of, you know, habits that we, you know, distractions, going on social media, for instance. The only way we can let go of that is to create a bridge and a future that looks bright to us. So we create a future, but it's not classic goal setting. It's answering a core need for you. With that bright future, we then have the confidence to step into that part that most of us don't want to go to, and that's to address the core fear. Once you know your core fear and what you're scared of, then you can start to understand how that's been playing out in your life and where importantly it came from. And this is where we go to your dark past and into your childhood. And then this creates the context so that, like detectives, when we go looking for your core destructive belief, it's not from shame or judgment, it's with curiosity. It's like going on a scavenger hunt looking for clues. And that's what we do. And in that open-minded space, we can actually discover the core destructive belief. Once you've discovered the core destructive beliefs, that opens you up to your core truth. And then the final piece is your guiding star, where you bring your shadow self together with your conscious self as a beautiful star. And this creates a template for your life going forward. It gives you a prescription, if you like, of your true path. And at that point, that's when you are on the threshold of crossing the fifth door and accepting your gifts and whatever it is that's going to give meaning to your life. So that's the path. And I call that process pain to passion, because that's the journey, going from the painful present, whether we like it or not, there is pain there that's been unresolved, and transmuting that into the power of passion. It's very simple. So that's the journey. And essentially, this is what, these are the three things that this masterclass, that I put this together so that you could understand these parts of you and what the future could look like for you and how to get there. So specifically, you've covered the 3 questions. Do you remember the 3 questions? Who am I? What's my gift? What's my pathway to my greatness? They're the 3 things to know about yourself. The second thing, the one thing that can stop you achieving your true potential. And finally, how to fast track your freedom so you don't waste any more of your precious time. And what I've just shared with you there is what I believe to be the fastest track that you can take to get to freedom. There's no one else teaching this. It's been brought together as a new, fresh approach. It doesn't come from, it's not something that's cobbled together. It's totally new. And the reason I'm so passionate about it is because I love nothing more than seeing the transformation in others and happen so quickly. So that's basically it. And if at this point you feel that you know enough and that's all you need, that's fine. And thank you so much for watching to this point. If there are any of you, however, who would be interested to know what it would look like to actually do this path, I'm happy to share that with you. I'll just do a qualifier though. If, in case you're wondering if this is for you or not, I'll just say it's not for you really if you don't have a deep commitment to personal growth. And if you don't, that's absolutely fine. I think we all have our own particular passion. That's definitely my passion. And I speak to people, the people I speak to are those who feel that maybe they're not growing enough or that there's an unfulfilled part of themselves. But if that's not you, then this program probably isn't right for you. Equally, if you look at all areas of your life and you go, you know what, I'm an 8 out of 10 in all areas, that's great. So you probably, this work probably wouldn't have the impact or the transformational value that you might be wanting. And finally, if you're not interested in exploring who you could become, then again, this program will not speak to you. So who is it for? Well, basically, this is for you if you're at a stage in your life, you know what you want, but you just don't know how to get it. And there's part of you that's keeping you held back. What is that all about? And hopefully you've got a much better understanding now of the mechanics behind that. And I hope you realize it's nothing to do with anything that's inherently wrong with you. It's just how you've been wired, like all of us, with this belief that's come from our shadow self. This is for you if there's at least one area of your life where you feel you're letting yourself down, because sometimes we can be successful in one area but not another. So what's that all about? What if you could be successful in all areas? And then also if you know that you could be something more and that your time has come to wake the F up. So if you feel that you need to see yourself as you are, see your future potential without the dirty lens of shame and guilt, it is definitely time for you to wake the F up. And that's why I called this whole masterclass that, because let's not beat around the bush. Life is short and, you know, carpe diem, as they say, it's up to all of us to do that. So this is a rally cry to any of you who may be feeling, yes, I think I am ready for change. Now, if you'd like to know what that looks like, I'll share with you here in terms of time investment. So I actually teach Pain to Passion as an online program in groups. So I'll share with you what it looks like to do this as a group. And it's interesting because every group that I've done this with, they don't know each other generally. They're a group of strangers. By the end of it, they are so close. It's incredible. And anyway, this is what I take them through. So it's not over months or years, but just 7 weeks as live sessions that I facilitate. So there's none of this, there's nothing pre-recorded. I'm there with you, guiding you through the exercises. You don't have to do them on your own. It's doing this with you live in a group. You have a workbook, you have guidance, you have recordings. If you want to check anything or review, all of that's available for you. WhatsApp group for easy communication. So basically what I'm saying is that everything is very, very guided and structured. And so the total investment of time is around 2.5 to 3 hours a week. And then when you think about that, if you multiply that by 7, the time investment to get off the hamster wheel of self-sacrifice, seize the life that's calling you, is less than 24 hours. So that's all you have to invest to make this transformation from not operating, not firing on all cylinders, to absolutely being in the slipstream of life where everything becomes effortless to you. So I'd like you just to think now in terms of what has all your negative programming cost you in dollars? Just think about it. What has been the price of self-sabotage in your life? Think about it. Is it in health? Can you put a dollar cost to that? Is it in finance, not charging what you're worth? Is it in relationships, relationship breakups? What have they cost you? Is it in work or career? Just not really stepping into your true genius zone, not being able to attract the income that you're really worth. What has that cost you? And see if you can just write it down as a conservative figure. Now, I have to say, in my case, it's actually in tens of millions of dollars, but I don't regret a moment of it because it led me to this point. But I had to learn the hard way, and my learning came at great financial expense. But just think for a moment, what has that core destructive belief and that shadow self that hasn't been integrated into you yet, what has that actually cost you? Just give it a guess. And so now I'll share with you, remember my dream to make a process that was accessible on all levels, not just from a time investment, but also a financial investment. And that's what I've created here. And so this is what I'm going to offer you. If you're interested, if this is for you, this is what my offering is. So the Paint of Passion online program, for this group, it's only for people that are actually part of this group behind the 5th door. It's a special offer. The standard investment is to do this as one of a group. Maximum number of people is 10, no more than 10 people. So it's a very intimate group, is 1,297. But if you register now, it's only 997. And this is an offer that I haven't actually shared before. It closes in 72 hours. Just to say that if you're going to do it and take action, don't let inaction stop you in your tracks, stop you from taking the very one program that will create a major shift that is permanent. I had a letter from someone just the other day who did the program 6 months ago, and it's absolutely changed his life. It's even saved him physical symptoms. He was suffering from chronic stomach pain, would you believe? And those symptoms have gone. He's gone on to a whole new career now. He's working for himself. And he just said, I can't thank you enough. I mean, this has just been a life changer for me. So my interest is in getting this out there to as many people as I can, but in a way that's effective and affordable. So I'm only going to make this available for 72 hours. You save a sizable amount by taking action within that time frame, taking action now. And as a bonus, and this is part of my philosophy, right? How many have you attended any programs that just haven't worked for you? Just write in the chat, yes, if you've attended programs that haven't worked for you before. I can't tell you how many I have, people who made big promises to change my life. And, you know, I had a little dopamine high for a while, and then a week later I go, what was that all about? You know, this is not that. So because this is not that, I offer my personal guarantee, which is that I make sure that you get to where you need to get to, having done this program. I don't leave anyone high and dry or stranded. So that's the offer. And I have 2 options for you. So there's the easy plan, which is 2 payments of $550, because I know that sometimes it's hard to come up with the cash. So that makes it easy. And then there's a simple plan, which is 1 investment of $997. So they're the options. And for the first 3 people who book, I'm also including a check-in call and additional one-on-one with me. to be taken during the program, so that if you've got any open loops, I close them for you for the first 3 people who book. So thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Wendy. Yes, yes, we all know those programs, don't we? So this is not that. This is all about you solving that problem of inaction. What is it that's holding you back? You know what your greatness is. You've got the vision already. Why is it not already out there? What is that? And if this piece in you can solve, not only does your own life become much easier, but all the people around you, your friends, your relatives, because they see you in your zone being happy, and it makes them happy. So it's a gift that you give to yourself that keeps giving to others as well. I can't emphasize just how important this is. So if you want to be in, we're going to post the link in the comments, and you just simply click that link, and that will guide you to the page. And you can choose one of those 2 options, whichever is the easy one, so 2 payments, or the simple one, which is just 1 payment, you get it out of the way and you're done. I'm going to just share some examples here of how this has worked for other people. Look, honestly, I've got masses of testimonials. There's no doubt it works, but sometimes it's helpful to hear other people's stories. So this is Chris, and I'm sharing Chris's story because it's such a dramatic one. But Chris had a business called Mass Participation Asia, and he was so he's the founder and CEO of that. And if you like, this is an organization that organizes marathons, mass events, bicycle tours, all sorts of things, but for many, many people, tens of thousands of people let it go. So you can imagine how a business like that would have been impacted by COVID. Anyway, Chris did this process of Pain to Passion. And when he did it, the reason he did it was because he was feeling stuck. He was in a rut and he just didn't know how to get out of it, and he couldn't identify the issue. His skeptical self was saying, I don't know about this, will it even work? And that was kind of the skeptical self that was also holding him back. But he knew enough about himself that he had to do something. And so he worked with me in a group. And he knew that it went way beyond I'm not good enough because, but he just couldn't work out what that core destructive belief was. Anyway, fortunately for Chris, he did this 1 month before COVID happened. Now, when COVID happened, you can imagine that whole industry just collapsed. It went out like that. In fact, even in the US now, I think 70% of people who are mass event organizers have gone bankrupt. Anyway, fortunately, Chris had done this program, so he had the resilience to deal with, the worst that fate could throw at him, which it certainly did. And so what he did, he had the sang-froid, if you like, he had the nous, the inner knowing, because he'd answered that question, who am I? He knew enough about himself to know that all he had to do was focus on the one thing that he was good at. He was good at many things, but he just focused on one. And as that turned out, it was as using his speaking abilities to set up a podcast. And so he discovered his limiting belief. He got everything to align to create the biggest global mass participation sport. So this is basically, now he's talking to people all around the world, and he set up his own podcast called The Aid Station. There's a screenshot from one of the episodes. He's now recorded over 100. He's networking with 46 countries. So he's gone from being a sole player who was stuck in a rut, a consultant working from home, a one-man band, to this person who now has an absolute global network and has created this network at the toughest time in history for his industry. So he's gone against all the odds to now be someone who's Mr. Mass Events around the world. Now, was this just because of Pain to Passion? I don't think I can take all the credit, but I tell you what, if he hadn't done it, I don't think he'd be where he is today. So that's where he is. And he said, since the fifth door, I'm now focusing on using my speaking skills to help hundreds of other event organizers in my situation through my podcast. So in other words, instead of becoming a victim, he rose above himself He trod his pathway to greatness, and he became the face of the person, the go-to person for the mass event industry in the world, and now exposed him to thousands of people that he simply wasn't reaching before, simply because he believed himself and self-doubt had gone out of the window of his container. So think about this, and just think about what's at stake here. What do you want in life? Let's have a look at what this can deliver for you. These are some of the side benefits of when you have embraced your shadow, brought your shadow to the light, and you become at one with yourself. So straight away, and a lot of this comes from people I work with and what they've reported back to me, you feel lighter and have more energy. So everyone reports that. Oh, I feel lighter. That's because literally dark energy has gone out of your system, the dark energy of shame. What else? You don't feel so stressed or anxious. So do you ever wake up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. with a pit in your stomach? I used to do that every single night. It hasn't happened to me for several years now. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, but often it's out of excitement. I'm thinking about stuff, which can be annoying, but it's not nearly as irksome as feeling that terrible pit, oh, what have I done? Your mind is more clear, so you can make decisions and you can take action. I mean, that's huge. So if I just stop there, would that be enough? If that's all you got from this program, would that be enough? Well, as they say in the commercials, but wait, there's more. It impacts your confidence, so you feel good in your skin. And so you can enter into any situation and be comfortable because you're comfortable being you. You know who you are because you know who you're not. So you're not all that negative stuff. You are you in the middle somewhere. We're not letting go of the shadow, but we're just saying it's a part of me, but it doesn't run my show anymore. And from this point, you begin to discover your true potential. You begin to discover your true potential, what you're truly capable of. And my assistant Ellie's just sent me a reminder saying she's posted that link. So if you want to go ahead, and if you want all of this that I'm spelling out here, you know what to do. Just click on the link and sign up for the program, because we do cut it off. There's an absolute cutoff at 10 people. I put myself on the line here. I guarantee that you have some shift, and I can't guarantee that for more than 10 people. So 10 is the right number. So so register now. If you're thinking about it, know that only good can come from this. I've never had anyone regret going on this path, quite the opposite. You feel more grounded and in control. That's the other thing. And instead of feeling apprehensive and fearful about the future, you're actually excited. It's a beautiful feeling. It's not crazy jumping up for joy. It's not that. It's just a beautiful feeling of constant engagement in life and just wanting to be here, not wanting to check out. So if you want any of those things, even if you could get just 3 of those things, imagine how awesome that would be. But this is typically what I get from people when I ask for their feedback. This is what they describe. So this is someone else who did this program. I've worked with hundreds of people, but I want to share this one actually. And full disclosure, Sarah's my sister. And in a way it's saying how awesome that this process is so strong that you can even get over the intricacies and programming of dealing with family members, because I shared with you my terrible jealousy of Sarah, my sister, when she was a baby. So the process is stronger than the individual, and the process allows us to have transformation, even if it's a family member that you might have issues with, which I'm happy to say I don't. We have a great relationship now. But Sarah was a bit like Chris. She was actually a divorced single mum. Well, not like Chris in that sense, but she was struggling. And she was actually a disillusioned vet. So she'd gone into vet. She loves animals, but she didn't like the whole wearing a white lab coat, dispensing medicines that animals maybe didn't need. And so she went into running pole dancing studios, a chain of pole dancing studios in Sydney, Australia. They, like Chris's industry, got slammed by COVID, absolutely. And so she started planning for bankruptcy because she couldn't see a way forward. And I reached out to her at that point and I said, Sarah, I'm running a group. I know this seems weird, me working with you in this sense, but would you like to join the group? And to her credit, she said yes. And it was such a beautiful thing to witness her transformation, because her big need was connection. And so it enabled her to connect with her true love, which was nature and always was, but vet was just not the right vehicle for her. And so she absolutely processed anything that was holding her back, any feelings of shame that had come from various aspects of her childhood. And her plan now going forward is to set up an animal rescue centre to reconnect children with nature. And interestingly, because she's following her passion on the outside, her business, which she's not going to do forever because she will just get too old for it, it's fully booked and booming. So it's doing better than ever. So in other words, because she got happy with herself, she had more energy to give to this business, which had been, you know, like a weight around a weight on her shoulders. It's booming, and her future has never been so bright. And she says, the fifth door has given me the confidence to know who I am, and in knowing who I am, therefore know what my true path is and pursue that. And now she's just on roller skates, literally. She's just charging ahead. So there she is. All right, so finally, when you sign up, it's very simple. You just have to click here. Very, very simple process. We'll look after the rest. So you just have to choose those two plans, either the easy plan or of two payments, or the simple plan of just one payment. And so just to close, because I can see that we're up to time. We did have a late start, I understand, but I am committed to not keeping you over time. Just a reminder that this really is your chance to unlock the biggest piece in the puzzle that is you, and start living a whole new empowering story. So I hope this has been beneficial to you. Maybe at the end of this, you can just reflect on what is the one takeaway, and please feel free to share this in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. What's the one thing that you've taken from this that's useful for you in your path going forward? It could be a tiny realization, it doesn't matter, but just what would be the one thing that you take from this that's helpful for your path going forward? So just remember now that there is a pathway, that you don't have to sit in a sense of stranded isolation, that life is grand, and that it's a limited, finite amount of time that we have. Whatever you do, don't sit in a place of stuckness going, this is all there is. I'll just put my head down. I'll put my nose to the grindstone. I'll sacrifice myself because that's the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do. It's very much the wrong thing to do for yourself, because the path to greatness is all about putting yourself first, not in a way of selfishness, but devoting time to yourself to understand who you are and what it is, the gift that you've been born with, to share, and putting that out there to the world. When you can crack those three questions and embrace your shadow so you become fully at one with who you are, life is a beautiful place, and all you want to do is keep doing more and more of whatever it is that you've found is your true path. So don't let yourself down. Don't let the negative voice at this point go, all right, that was interesting, but not for me. If there's a part of you that is saying, I need to wake up. Thank you so much for staying on to the end, and I wish you all the best. And I very much look forward to seeing some of you in the Zoom room for when we do Pain to Passion, starting July the 1st. If you have any questions, it's all spelled out in that form, and you can always reach out to me if you've got any more questions. Just don't let inaction win. That's my final statement. This offer closes in 72 hours. Say to yourself, yes, if you know that there's a part of you that's drowning right now, that's sleepwalking through life. Don't let that inner child down. Be there for the person that's within you that's waiting to burst free, and be that person. It's absolutely possible. Thank you so much.